and welcome to No Offseason. I'm Zena Cada.
I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And I'm Ben Pickman.
And today on the show, we are well past the halfway mark in the WNBA season, so we thought it'd be a good time to check in on our MVP conversation and ask those important questions. What makes someone a contender for this coveted title, and who makes the cut for our shortlist? Plus, Ben is going to bring us inside a super fun WNBA tradition, the post-practice half-court shot contest. But first, got to go around the association, of course. And the most important, we got to give congratulations for A'ja Wilson and her making history with the first ever WNBA 30-20 double-double. Yes, A'ja Wilson is on top. If you've heard that commercial, it's accurate. 32 points, 20 rebounds in Sunday night's matchup against the Connecticut Sun. Unbelievable performance. I am so sorry to Tina Charles, who will go down in the history books as, yes, a Hall of Famer, but also the person frantically trying to find A'ja Wilson as she put those numbers up.
And Tina Charles wears A'ja Wilson's while she plays, right?
Oh, right. She does wear the A1s. Oh, the support is there, but man, that's
a lot of support, really.
A lot of support. Helping her make history and rocking the shoes. Man, that's a crazy correlation. I did not even think about that. All right, moving on. We got some tough news for Indiana. Already still having Caitlin Clark out, upon which we don't know any updates to her condition. They're now out two more point guards. They suffered a blow. Sydney Colson, Aari McDonald will both miss the remainder of the season after suffering injuries in last Thursday's game when they lost to the Mercury 95-60. Sabrina, tell me more about what happened with these two injuries, and let's talk about what impact it will have on the Fever.
Yeah, so Sydney Colson's injury was pretty evident from the moment you saw it. She had her knee buckle in front of the Indiana bench. You can see Sophie Cunningham's reaction in real time because she's literally right in front of Sydney. It's one of those things, non-contact. You just know when it happens that it's going to be bad for your knee. And Sydney Colson, she's one of the older players in the league, part of that 2011 draft class. So, you hate to speculate, but at this point in her career, what does an ACL tear mean for her future going forward in the WNBA? At the very least, she is out for the remainder of the season. And then to top that off, later in that game, which, as you mentioned, was a 35-point loss for the Indiana Fever, Aari McDonald suffers a broken bone in her foot, and now she will be out for the remainder of the season. And Aari McDonald has dealt with injuries throughout her WNBA career. It's just been one of the reasons why it's been tough for her to latch on, whether that was in Atlanta or Los Angeles. She's also out for the remainder of the season, has been such a bright spot for the Fever, coming in when Caitlin suffered that first injury, really making a mark, implanting that defensive identity, helping Indiana win the Commissioner's Cup title this year. But that's 2 point guards that the Fever will not be with for the remainder of the regular season. We don't know, as you said, Caitlin Clark's timeline. And since those injuries, they have signed Odyssey Sims to a hardship contract. Odyssey Sims, the owner of the most hardship contracts in the WNBA since 2020, famously caught on with Dallas and Los Angeles over the last couple of years on hardship deals, finishing out the season with both those teams. So she is accustomed to this situation, knows what it's like to come in at this point of the season and have to just figure things out right away. But really, really tough blow for the Fever, especially when they had been playing so well, that 5-game winning streak heading into this week. And then to end on that stretch is just a real bummer for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy to hear. Literally, I think it was the day before or that morning that Post Moves came out with Leah Boston and Candace Parker and Aaliyah talking about how much Aari McDonald especially had been like a jewel for them in the way that she came in and immediately became a pinch hitter. There was kind of like a redemption arc aspect to both Sydney and Aari's journeys with Indiana, so it is tough. But yes, Odyssey Sims, the ultimate pinch hitter. This is definitely what she knows how to do, and so hopefully, she'll be able to get the Fever back on track. But let's talk a little bit about these injuries because, of course, Aari McDonald, Sydney Colson, Caitlin Clark, those are just some of the names. We also have some big stars out. Napheesa Collier still out from that ankle injury she suffered on August 2nd. Angel Reese out. Brianna Stewart. I mean, these are some big names in the W not contributing towards games in the very, crucial part of the season that are impacting positioning, home court advantage in the playoffs, etc. Ben, what are your thoughts on, how this impacts the game, the vibes of the WNBA, the competition? especially as some of these games are going on, like Minnesota Lynx, New York Liberty, and we're not seeing Fee and Stewie go up against each other.
I mean, it's obviously pretty unfortunate that so many stars, some of the names you mentioned, Zena, have missed time. I mean, you look up at the WNBA standings, the top 5 teams in the standings, basically one of their best players has missed significant time or is missing significant time this year. Napheesa Collier with the Minnesota Lynx. New York seen both Stewie and Jonquel Jones miss time. Ryan Howard's missed time for the Dream. AT, Satu, and Ka, they've all missed time for Phoenix at different points in the year. Caitlin Clark, as we mentioned, she's still out for significant time. Like, it's just unfortunate that so often throughout this season, some of the biggest names that people want to see have not been active. And, it has set a damper for this important time, or this notable week, I should say, in the WNBA calendar. It is technically rivalry week in the WNBA
Right.
calendar. I know we mentioned this at the start of the season. We got into a little bit of a heated discussion. I was not really a fan of rivalry week
I'm so glad you
before
brought
the
it up, though,
season.
Ben.
Yeah, I am
Sabrina
too. I am too.
Sabrina was a little bit of a fan,
Rivalry
and
Week presented by Ally. Let's point out. It's a great branding.
sorry for the thank you for the clarification. And
Oxymoron is great.
Guess what? It's been a little bit of a damper to the start of rivalry week because Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark did not play in the kickoff game. You mentioned it. Fee and Stewie did not play in Sunday's Liberty Lynx game. Up and down, we did see Ryan Howard return, but it doesn't seem to have the same juice. Of course, the league could not have predicted what is going on, but it is certainly unfortunate, and I think it's just a testament to, a lot of players are talking about the schedule, the spacing of games, the season footprint. There's different perspectives on all of this, and I also just think, kind of the middle of the season and the wear and tear. But yeah, it's definitely been a damper for this moment in time right now, gearing into the stretch run.
For what it's worth, I do want to make sure we say it properly. It's Rivals Week,
Mm.
presented by Ally, and I did not realize the oxymoron there until Sabrina just said it. But Sabrina, I'm happy that we're talking about Rivals Week and we're talking about the Sabrina scale, because the Sabrina scale has historically been incredibly impacted by any up and down, any win, etc. But you mentioned this on your social media accounts, of course. Saw Courtney Williams chopping it up after taking down the Liberty, and it's kind of like, all right, well, there's not much there on the Liberty right now to be really getting excited about it, but it's Rivals Week, so maybe that's why she's excited. Maybe that's why she's hyped. It's finally August 11th, and these two teams are coming together to battle. Looking at the Sabrina scale, I'm seeing that there was a little bit of volatility, but towards the end, towards those playoff positions, saw the Valkyries jump up a little bit, the Aces moved up a little bit. I mean, it couldn't have been after that Connecticut Sun rivalry game. So give
Is
me a
that a
little bit of
rivalry, Zena?
insight.
What rivalry is that?
2002 WNBA finalists, Las Vegas and
Listen,
Connecticut.
see,
Tina
I
Charles and
knew
Angel Wilson,
Sabrina.
two of the greatest frontcourt players of all time in the WNBA. Who knows?
As Tina Charles wears her rival's shoes on the court. But anywho, talk to me a little bit about what stood out to you as some things changed in your rankings this week.
I mean, as you said, not a ton of motion. I should point out, big potential rivalry game in the future, Golden State and Los Angeles, part of this week.
Ooh.
Maybe that turns into a California rivalry as we go forward. I saw some Valkyries mention, if you want to call it a rivalry, sure. I guess we're not there
Yeah.
yet, but it could be. That was obviously a very important game for playoff positioning. The Valkyries win, make it 3-1 in the season series. Now they have the tiebreaker over the Sparks. Just an incredible defensive performance by the Valkyries, taking, basically all the paint touches away from the Los Angeles Sparks, preventing that driving kick offense that they've done so well to get implemented during this really hot stretch post All-Star. I think the Sparks came into that game having scored 100 points in 5 of their previous 6 games, and they ended with 59 against the Valkyries. So just
Insane.
a little, understanding of how good Valkyries defense was in that particular matchup. But, that's why you see Golden State, even after losing a couple of games to the Aces, move up, because of how pivotal that was for playoff positioning. And the Sparks, again, 4 games this week, they go 3-1. They still move down a little bit just because of how important that tiebreaker is going to be as we go down the line.
Okay. You also had we just talked a little bit about the Fever going from 3 to 5. We know that they're kind of rocky in that situation. But one of the teams that also moved down, and I don't think insignificantly, is the Seattle Storm. And the Seattle Storm, though, had an acquisition And Brittney Sykes, slim. She showed up against the LA Sparks. Okay. You could see they were still trying to fit her in against the Aces earlier in the weekend, but by the time things got comfortable on Sunday, she got real comfortable within that offense. But we also got to see Dijonai Carrington over the weekend with her team in Minnesota. And it's interesting because these two women have now been put into teams that are vying for playoff contention. Minnesota's really like trying to lock things up. Seattle's trying to ensure that they have a position to get into the playoffs and compete. And both were brought for different reasons. I'm looking at Brittney and I'm like, Seattle wanted an extra scoring opportunity. They wanted us to shore up the defense. Dijonai gets added to Minnesota, and it's like, all right, defense, and you shift people into the roles that they would prefer to play, right? Kayla McBride doesn't have to take on the most difficult opponent opposite side the ball. She can now focus on her offense and being able to score. Different ways in which they've immediately impacted their teams, but what do you think about how these two players showed up? And I want to talk a little bit about who you think might have the best impact.
Well, first things first, I'm going to take it as my duty on this podcast to continue to hype Rivals Week and the fact that we got Dominique Malonga and Cam Brink again against one another. So good. I love that matchup so very
20
much.
and 10.
I'm not going to talk about this every week, but I could. Dominique Malonga, game by game, just an insane growth trajectory. But yeah,
Unreal.
Sykes versus Carrington, a really interesting juxtaposition, I guess, in how those two players have sort of fit in their new teams. You know, you look at Sykes and she has this phenomenally successful offensive game for the Storm against the Sparks, comes off the bench against the Aces, then they put her in the starting lineup against Los Angeles. I was kind of stunned at how much of the offense turned towards Brittney Sykes down the stretch.
Same.
Like, it became the Brittney Sykes show. And again, 6 of 7 in the fourth quarter. It's not like you can quibble with the results there. They do end up losing, blowing a 7-point lead in the final 2.5 minutes. I don't know that you can actually, blame the offense for that. It was a defensive miscues over and over again. But you have a team that has 3 all-stars in Neko Gumake, Skylar Diggins, Gabby Williams, and again, Dominique Malonga, who maybe has been playing better than anybody else on the Storm over the past couple weeks. And to have so much run through Sykes 2 games into her Seattle tenure was shocking to me. Like, I could not believe a team that was just trying to get a little deadline help had its offense look dramatically different, again, in her second game, her first game in the starting lineup. So that was pretty surprising to me and very different from what we saw with Dijonai Carrington on the Minnesota side of things.
On Carrington, we've just seen it be a pretty seamless fit, and she's coming off the bench, but we have seen her play a pretty significant role as well, much like Brittney Sykes, ever since she arrived in Minnesota. And you mentioned it, Zena, when you kind of teed up this topic, because not only is Dijonai's defense impactful because of just how good of a defender that she is, but Cheryl Reeve talked about this postgame, after their win over New York. She also takes so much defensive pressure off of Kayla McBride, who no longer just has to chase around, an opponent's best big guard night after night, possession after possession. McBride is then kind of able to switch into matchups that might not be as defensively taxing, and as a result, she can flourish on the offensive end. And we saw her score a team-high 18 points in their double-digit win over New York on the weekend. On the offensive end, Dijonai Carrington, she talked about it pregame too, like her ability to get downhill and drive to the rim is a facet that might have been missing some from Minnesota's backcourt, and she does that and has the ability to drive and kick. So that is definitely a big boost. But overall, just what she means for Minnesota's bench is so significant. A big reason why they beat New York on the weekend was because of the bench. It wasn't just Dijonai Carrington who scores 15 points. I think we should give a shout out to Maria Klindikova, and I should correct the record here. Last week when we did the game about numbers, we said she wore 88. She wears 77, 11 off, but still an over 50
You said
number
a
in that
Luka
game.
homage, which I think is correct.
Yeah, Luka
with the
homage.
77.
That is correct, but I think I did say 88 in the end. So want to correct the record there. But Maria Klindikova, it's the 3rd most minutes she has ever played in her WNBA career. And yes, she only finishes 6 points, 5 rebounds, but her length was a problem for Jonquel Jones and New York's front court. You saw just her physical presence disrupted passing lanes, disrupted shot opportunities. Again, it's the 3rd most minutes she has ever played. And Cheryl Reeve, I thought, made a really, really good comment, or a really insightful comment post-game, that Klindikova is Russian, has been a star in the Russian league really since she was 18. And so she is used to playing against Jonquel Jones. She has played against and with Emma Mieseman and Jonquel and with Brianna Stewart. And so there's a familiarity there that I think is pretty rare for an international player who has to now suddenly guard, some of these big centers or star frontcourt players. And she did look very much as comfortable as Cheryl was talking about. So credit to Minnesota's D, and Carrington really, is the biggest boost they have off the bench right now. And certainly looks like a very smart trade from Cheryl Reeve and the front office now and going forward.
Very excited to see how this continues to play out in terms of looking at how Brittney Sykes, Dijonai Carrington, and let's also add Emma Mieseman into that conversation of how they impact their teams. I think the immediate instinct was Emma Mieseman will easily be the person that's going to change their offense, their look, and just add to New York. But you're seeing, as Sabrina mentioned, Brittney Sykes has the ultimate green light in Seattle. Pun intended. I just realized that their
Storm
colors
green
are that.
light.
Storm green light in Seattle. And then Dijonai Carrington, again, that defensive powerhouse that she's bringing and also pressuring the rim, as you mentioned. And then, Emma Mieseman just being MVP caliber Emma Mieseman, but perfectly at the time that Brianna Stewart is out. And I think that's a really important measure there to see how they continue to impact their team. So we shall see. Before the break, I do want to mention, shout out to the Women's Premier Basketball Association. I got the chance to call their championship game. This is a really cool league that is happening in Oakland, started by a former player. Fatima of the WPPA thought about having basically almost like a secondary league under the G League. And this league features some of your top NCAA players, including Brooke Dimitri out of Stanford, whose team, Bay City Blaze, won the championship, but also players that have been in the WNBA. Brooke Dimitri is actually going up against her Stanford coach, Erica McCall, who we've seen play in the WNBA. I know she played for the Mystics at one point. Found some short stints throughout the W, but it was an unbelievable game. This is a really, really cool league, and I'm very curious as to how it's going to continue to grow. Hopefully, the WNBA is taking note because, as we've seen, there are so many NCAA players, WNBA players, players overseas that don't have a place to go because the roster spots are so limited. So this was a really cool opportunity for them, and I hope it continues to grow. This was year 2 that I know of for sure of the WBPA. So definitely go check them out. They were awesome. Let's go talk about some MVPs right after this break. Okay, so up until a few weeks ago, I think most W fans would have agreed that the obvious contender for MVP was Napheesa Collier. She was putting up stupid numbers. Both offensively and defensively, her team was winning, averaging 23.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. She was dominant in all ways. And then she went down with an ankle injury against the Vegas Aces on August 2nd. And that kind of opened things up because her play went to a pause. She has not been back on the court yet. And it might seem like MVP is not as locked up as we once thought it was, especially with the A'ja Wilson game we just saw the other night. So I want to talk a little bit about A'ja because we know the numbers with Fee. A'ja's on the court. She's doing things. But before we get into that, what does recent history, Ben, tell us around this title about the type of players that typically wear this crown?
Well, it starts with you have to basically be a forward. That is
Yeah.
the simplest thing that recent history would tell us, because a true guard has not won this award since Diana Taurasi in 2009. Think about
Whoa.
that for a second.
That
Maya
we
Moore.
switch Maya Moore back and forth between guard and forward.
We
depending
go
on
back
what
and
works
forth
for
on
our
Maya Moore.
purposes.
Yeah, it depends on the stat. Maya Moore did obviously win some awards. A lot of people classify her as a forward. If you want to throw her in, it's 2014. Do of that what you will. But still, at least a decade since a guard has won MVP. So that is one thing to consider right off the top. In recent years also, if you want to win MVP, probably should be named Brianna Stewart or A'ja Wilson.
Right.
They have won 5 of the last 7 MVP awards. So we shall see if that happens this year. And another stat that I think is pretty important for the conversation we're about to have is games played. Because in the WNBA, there is not a rule in terms of award eligibility like there is in the NBA currently, and this was put in recent years. To be eligible and to win an award in the NBA, you have to play 65 of the 82 games. The WNBA
Mm.
does not have that award. But for the MVP specifically, Jonquel Jones, actually, in her MVP winning season in 2021, she missed 5 games that year. She played in 27 of 32 games. That is the most, or that is the most games missed of any MVP in WNBA history. So that is a piece of history that could very much be up for grabs this year, depending on how many games that Napheesa Collier misses. So durability, obviously important. We'll see how important it is, though, in this year's conversation, and we shall see if she obviously satisfies the front court player rule, but obviously she does not satisfy the Breanna Stewart, Asia Wilson name caveat rule. So we'll see
Right.
what happens in terms of history there, too.
There are some parents right now that just had some newborns that are like, damn it, I need to go change that birth certificate if I want my kid to be an MVP. All right, Sabrina, what would you say are some of the key aspects that get factored into determining MVP? Obviously, forwards, side, that's just history.
Mhm.
The names, that's just history. But there is a way in which the people with the names and the position have played, and the way that their teams have played. So, what are some of the aspects that you've seen be a pattern?
Well, it really helps to be on the number 1 seed in the WNBA to win the MVP. You look at that stretch that Ben was pointing out, 5 of the last 7 being Stewie and Asia. Stewie on the number 1 seed in 2018, Elena Deladon, number 1 seed in 2019, Asia Wilson, number 1 seed in 2020, Jonquel Jones, number 1 seed in 2021, Asia Wilson, number 1 seed in 2022.
Mm.
Asia Wilson being on the 4 seed last year was a real surprise, right? Like, she had this historic season where she sets a single season points record and single season rebounds record, for total. Again, number of games increased, so that changes things. But like, that was an anomaly historically to be on the 4th seed out of 12 and still win MVP. Normally you have to be in the top seed or a top 2 seed to really be considered for this award. So team success does factor into how voters think about MVP, and how this award ends up being decided in most years.
And from a perspective of an individual player, though, and I'll ask both of you here, Ben, I'll start with you. Like, we've heard this concept of the best player on the best team. So Sabrina's pretty much laid out. If you're on the number 1 seed, they probably are the best team, especially in the regular season, of course. But in terms of being the best player, that is debatable on how that shows up, right? Whether it's a efficiency perspective, is it a points per game perspective? Is it defense and offense? These type of things typically lean towards offense and production in that way. But if you're an amazing player that scores 30 points per game, but you're getting tons of turnovers, or you're an amazing player that scores 30 points per game, but you can't guard a cone. Like, what are how do these things kind of get laid out in terms of individual performance, Ben?
Well, I mean, I think this year what we're probably going to see is something very different than, say, what our anonymous poll that Sabrina and I did earlier this season revealed. Because when we did that poll, if you remember, we polled who was the best player in the WNBA right now in the eyes of the WNBA players themselves, the players that we sampled. And the differential there, it was Napheesa Collier by, I think, right, 1 or 2 votes, right,
One,
Sabrina? That
yeah.
was it? Like, when we look at MVP voting down the line here, and we should say voting is done by media members like Sabrina and I both have official ballots, I would expect that the official results are not going to be separated by 1 or 2 votes. Maybe they will be, and we can play this clip back, and Asia Wilson goes on a total tear, and the whole conversation flips, and we get an MVP race like we saw a couple years back with Stewie and AT and Asia. But like, that tells you that it's not just a reflection of who is the best player in the league right now, that some of the things that Sabrina just talked about, how good is the team? How do they look when a player is on the court, off the court, their situation? I do think, admittedly for some voters, I think voter fatigue or just having a fresh name for some people does make an impact. So,
Mm.
Asia Wilson still puts up the kind of dominant performances that very much makes her feel like the best player in the league on any given night. But I don't think the voting is going to be as close as maybe the kind of player poll results showed.
You. Casual flex, yes, Sabrina and Ben get votes. I'm working my way up, y'all. I'm working my way up. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's actually make some cases here for MVP. And, we talked a little bit about the numbers, but I'll allow both of you to make a case for Asia and for Fee, because I think those are the top two. And then let's open it up. So, Sabrina, you take Fee. Ben, you take Asia. Sabrina, I'll start with you. Make a case for why Napheesa Collier, even with her absence right now on the court, should or could be the MVP this season.
I mean, I think this is the easiest case to make, right? She's the best player on the best team. I think she's been having the best season in the WNBA this year. Her team is 27-5. That's 6 losses clear of anybody else in the WNBA. She's averaging, as you mentioned earlier, 23.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 1.8 steals. Like, her efficiency is off the charts. You think about where A'ja Wilson gets a lot of her shots from. Like, Fee's effective field goal percentage is about 80 points higher than, or like 8 percentage points higher than A'ja Wilson. So just an effective season on both ends of the court, leading the best team on both ends of the court. I think playing winning basketball, being in games where teams constantly are trying to beat you, where you have the target on your back, is a harder task than like playing for a team that's just trying to make the playoffs. So, I mean, this has been like a long coronation for Fee basically ever since they lost in the finals in 2024. What she's done in her off season and now coming into the WNBA has just been consistently excellent on a night-to-night basis.
I like it. Yeah, that pretty much lays it out. So, Ben, this will be difficult for you, but hopefully, if there's any evidence from the game we saw on Sunday, there is a lot there to support the idea that A'ja Wilson could also win MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's actually 2 games on Sunday that provide some evidence about A'ja Wilson's case. The first is the Aces game, and the second is the Lynx game, because the Minnesota Lynx went into New York, albeit without Breanna Stewart, and looked pretty good, beating the defending champions by double digits on their home court. And, Napheesa Collier, obviously integral, as Sabreena would say, to everything that the Minnesota Lynx would do. I'm not going to dispute that. She's obviously had a tremendous season, but Minnesota is still a very, very good basketball team, even if you take Fee off of it. The same cannot be said for the Las Vegas Aces. The Aces are 28.4 points better. That is, I guess, A'ja Wilson's on-off split this season with A'ja on the court. That's her net rating, so 28.4 points better per 100 possessions with A'ja on the court. And that is the most of any player in the league who has played at least 100 minutes this season. And we should say 100 minutes, not that many minutes. Like, I didn't really... there's a lot of players, I guess, who have played. Right. Yeah, I left the door open. Emma Mieseman's pretty close. She has just played just over 100 minutes, if you want a little point of comparison here. And A'ja, obviously, like, you take her off the Las Vegas Aces. We tape this, they're 18-14. Like, what are the Aces if you remove A'ja? That is really the question. She very well still could be the best player in the league. I do think, if I'm going to counter my own argument here, because I think that is a fair thing to do, the thing that holds A'ja's case back is just that difference in team performance. And frankly, I think some of the bad losses that the Aces have had this year, if we're going to kind of use the college basketball parlance. Like, A'ja against Minnesota, they lost by 53 points very recently, and that was not a game she played very well in. And then, a week before that, they lost by 30 plus points? What was the final? 31 points. Right, and those are the 2 worst losses for the Aces this season. And more generally, the Aces have lost 4 games this year by 25 or more points. Anyone want to take a guess how many times that has happened in the prior seasons in A'ja Wilson's career? Anybody have a guess on that one?
I'm going to go with a 0.
It has happened 5 total times throughout A'ja's career, and 4 times this season. And of those 5 times, 2 of those times happened in her first 4 games as a pro, which is all to say that once A'ja Wilson got the hang of it, the Aces very rarely lost by 25 or more points. That's just how good she is. And this year, things have obviously not been the same. So, you take A'ja off the Aces, they are not a very good team, but it's hard to overlook. It's hard to overlook those losses to Minnesota, especially when you're comparing these 2 players, apples to apples, in this eventual conversation, too.
I think that's why it comes back down to what you're trying to evaluate for most valuable player, Like, is it just the most outstanding, who has the most individual statistical impact, or is it somebody who is providing value in the sense of making their team a championship contender or vaulting their team higher up in the standings. This is sort of how I distinguish between MVP and all WNBA, for example. Like, I don't really have a problem including players who are on losing teams on all WNBA because I think of that as a more outstanding situation. Whereas MVP, the winning kind of matters, and when you lose to your head-to-head rival in MVP consideration by 50 plus points, by 30 plus points, and you look at their individual stats in those games, right? Like, A'ja Wilson averages 12 and a half points in those 2 games against Minnesota. Fee's got 21 and a half, like, rebounds in Fee's favor, assists in Fee's favor, Uh, I think that the fact that the Aces are not as good, is not going to hurt A'ja Wilson's all WNBA candidacy, I can tell you that. But in terms of MVP, it just matters when you're in games that have more stakes to them than what the Aces have been doing for the majority of this regular season.
So it does sound like there's more merit to the concept of the best player on the best team. And for what it's worth, Ben, just for clarity, I thought you meant the amount of times in a season that the Aces have lost by 25 points or more 4 times. So technically,
Hmm.
that's not happened. Got it. Okay.
That's true.
Only
That is correct.
5
It's
times.
only 5 times throughout
Yeah,
her
I
whole
was like,
career.
got it. Okay.
They had
That's
never once before.
individual. That's actually
Yes.
an insane number. That's unreal. Okay. Well, let's talk about some other MVP candidates because I think Fee and Asia are kind of like the glaring ones. But of course, I mean, if we want to go to Vegas, there are definitely others to talk about, whether it's Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark, etc. Let's throw some names out there. Sabrina, I'll let you start first. Any other like dark horses you're looking at in the MVP conversation? Let's stick to 5, thinking that Fee and Asia have taken 2.
I got so confused when you said go to Vegas. You didn't mean like the Aces. You meant like go to Vegas to gamble on this sort of thing.
The
That's what
bets.
you were
Yes,
referring
I'm
to.
so
Which
sorry.
we cannot
Yes.
do. Which we cannot do,
Right.
just
We
for
cannot
clarity's
bet,
sake
but
here.
To point that out, we are not gambling on
Exactly.
this.
Exactly. We're not
Okay.
gambling, but Vegas, as in the betters, have thoughts on other folks in this conversation, and
Well, to be
we're not
clear,
Vegas.
I only think this is a conversation if Napheesa Collier continues to miss significant time going forward. Because
I
as
think
it
I'm with you
stands,
with
even
that.
if she's like, I'll say 150 minutes shy of whoever else is on the MVP ballot, her season has just been so dominant that I'm willing to forgive a few missed games because of how much better the Lynx have been and how much better Collier's been. But, if we're talking about a situation where Fee's out for a month, let's say, then 2 names that I would have to keep an eye on are Alyssa Thomas and Allisha Gray. I mentioned that winning matters a
Mm.
great deal in terms of this MVP conversation. And you look at the teams that are atop the standings, there's Atlanta in a tie for second place and Phoenix 1 game behind them. And, those on-off ratings, right? Alyssa Thomas, Phoenix is 12 and a half points per 100 possessions better with her on the court. Allisha Gray, 12.1 possessions better with her on the court. I'm actually more interested in just how good they are with, they're both like +9 or better with those players on the court. Allisha Gray sort of been like the most consistent player for the Atlanta Dream as Ryan Howard's been out, as Brittney Griner's, been through her injuries, Naz Hillman in the bench in the starting lineup. Like, Gray, best perimeter defender, best scorer. She's the one you put the ball in her hands at the end of games when you're trying to win. And then Alyssa Thomas sort of just like I feel like the engine really captures a lot of what Alyssa Thomas does, right? Just the motor of everything that's happening in Phoenix. She's running the offense, emotionally lifting the team. As Ben mentioned earlier, a lot of absences for Kalia Copper. Satu Sabli has been in and out of the lineup. Ever since that initial stretch where Alyssa Thomas was unable to play, she's just been the one who's consistently been there night in and night out, helping Phoenix win games. So those are the 2 names that I think the only 2 names that really belong in this conversation as we're talking about people who could win MVP other than Napheesa
Yeah.
Collier and A'ja Wilson. But yeah, just how good of seasons they've had for their teams and individually.
Especially with Allisha Gray having a career season, in terms of just improvements all across all of the stats that she's putting up for Atlanta, and it's translating into wins. Ben, Allisha, and AT feel like the only 2 to seriously discuss about this, but there are some players that I'm thinking are making a very quiet push, and that includes Sabrina Ionescu in your corner of the woods. Do you have her in that conversation yet?
I mean, she might be in like the deep conversation on an
Deep
all
cuts.
W team
Sure.
conversation, but I think Sabrina lays it out pretty well here that AT and Leash are kind of the next 2 on my ballot. And I want to just say about AT, I think the thing that's been so impressive for me this year is she's actually scoring the ball more than she ever has
Yeah.
before. It's a career high in points. She has 6 games this year with 20 plus more scoring. She had just 2 last year. And if you look at it, like, that has been one of the things that she no longer, obviously she can pass and she can rebound, but the offense has been so important, literally, like
Yeah.
what she can do creating and finishing plays. Like, I think that has been so impressive. And then, of course, you have like all these crazy numbers that just reflect her well-rounded games. I think over the weekend, she tied Courtney Vandersloot for the most assists, in WNBA a single season for made three-pointers. Like, that's crazy when you think about it. Like, she is a power
Mhm.
forward who's assisting players for threes at a historic level. She's going to set that record this week. And then there's this great cross league stat that is all over the Phoenix Mercury game notes. So credit to the Mercury staff for digging this one up. But AT is on pace to finish this season with 15 plus points, 8 plus rebounds, 9 plus assists, at least one steal, and 50+% shooting. The only NBA players to have ever done that are LeBron, Magic Johnson, and Nikola Jokic.
And those are in
You know,
48-minute
Wow.
games, whereas AT's doing
right?
this in
Those
a
are
40-minute
48
game.
minute
Correct.
games.
Yeah.
And like
And
that is a crazy stat when you put, her season this year in the conversation with those 3 all-time greats. It just reflects how versatile and effective she has been. But going back to what Sabrina was saying, like, it's hard to then overlook the team side of it and also just some of the individual numbers that Fee has put up to as it relates to AT's performance
yeah.
overall.
Yeah,
Just one
this
more thing
actually
about AT. She has a higher effective field goal percentage than Asia this year. And you don't think about AT being a more efficient scorer than Asia Wilson, but for, like you said, career high in points, just the way she's doing it, it's not like she just has a higher volume of usage. She's actually scoring the ball at a good rate too, which is not something that we've historically associated with Alyssa Thomas.
the one thing that stands out to me about AT though, and I just this in this conversation around the MVP, Ben, you mentioned it a few years ago. It was this really tight race between Brianna Stewart, Asia Wilson, and AT. And AT in that year, and she's doing the same thing in this year, was putting up more triple doubles than anyone else in the entire association. And yet, that efficiency of being a playmaker, being a scorer, being someone that is, providing opportunities for your team to get up and down the floor by getting rebounds, offensive or defensive, isn't enough, even though it is technically a more balanced approach. It's a more balanced impact on winning. Why is it that AT's ability to get triple doubles and her ability to do so many different things on both sides of the ball isn't enough? Even if Phoenix was winning all of their games, I still feel like she might not get the same level of admiration for her game as we see some of these other forwards get.
Well, Zena, I should say, and you didn't know this probably, but you're asking the wrong person that
Yep.
question because I was actually an AT first place voter in that MVP
Oh, okay,
conversation.
okay,
So I think the better person to spin that question to is our good friend Sabrina on the other end of this
okay.
podcast.
I just think, when you use the word versatility, like the other candidates have versatility in their game, right? Like Napheesa Collier can shoot the ball from distance. Like Alyssa Thomas can't do that. She is a more versatile defender, I think, than Alyssa Thomas is. The rim protection that Napheesa Collier provides is, a different element in her tool bag. Being a high level volume scorer, like 7 more points per game, is a big deal, right? So I think, this isn't to discount Alyssa Thomas's game. She obviously is capable of doing a lot of different things on a basketball court. I have her probably second in my voting right now. Uh, yeah, behind Napheesa Collier. So it's not to say that like she's not having an excellent season. It's just you're looking at a player who's leading a 27-5 team and has been really, really good all
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Okay, well, we know that these forwards are always gonna dominate the conversation a little bit. We mentioned Allisha Gray. I tried to get Ben to talk a little bit about Sabrina. I don't know if there's any other guards, though, that you guys are thinking about. Ben, help me out.
Yeah, I mean, one name to watch certainly down the stretch run here, I think more for all WNBA team consideration is Kelsey Mitchell.
And that's another one I wanted to mention,
Like,
yes.
she obviously, the basketball is going to be, she's had a great season already. She actually just scored the most points in the league right now as we tape this podcast. And she's had a great year. Again, another all-star year, third straight. And the ball is going to be in her hands even more going forward with Colson and McDonald going out for season-ending injuries. So Kelsey Mitchell is another player to watch, especially if Indiana continues to kind of stay afloat and then some during this stretch run. Like, we shall see. Could they end up as a 4 seed or a 3 seed? Like, those things are not out of the question with just how close the standings are. I mean, Sabrina Ionescu has had, another great season as well, and she very much is going to make first team or second team all WNBA. To me, like, I think there have been some lulls in her season
Mm.
overall, and that, even that on a game to game level. And that is not just her, that is New York as a whole, as they have dealt with so many injuries. Like, there has been a ton of inconsistency from the New York Liberty there. When they are healthy again, their 9-0 start, they had a plus 23.4 net rating. And I know that's a pretty important number for them as they look forward. But throughout the course of the year since then, they're a 500 team. And so, when you think about that being the majority of the season, like, it's hard to separate those two segments when you're thinking about this conversation and her candidacy. And Talish, overall, I think she's been the most consistent and most effective guard in the league this year. I mean, she leads the league in minutes played. Like, she is 6th in scoring. She's 4th in field goal percentage among guards, basically. Like, on offense, she does everything for the Atlanta Dream. She's had to carry the load with Jordan Canada missing time, with Ryan Howard missing time, with Atlanta figuring out its front court rotation with BG and Naz Hillman and Bree Jones. Like, she has been this kind of stabilizing force and this kind of opener of sorts. Like, she is this player who has kind of taken advantage of the freedom that Carl Smesko has provided and been this stabilizing kind of distributor, freeing force throughout the season. And so, I mean, yeah, it's a career year for her,
Mm.
and I think she'll end up getting rewarded accordingly.
Okay. Now, I might have to throw it back to the fours, but maybe even just like the big girls in general
You want to throw
before we
Leah? I
close
mean,
this out.
you want to throw Leah Boston's name like
There,
that?
I
That's another
I
name.
want to throw two names out there, and yes, Aaliyah Boston's one of them. And this is going to be a stretch, but I think that this person definitely needs more shine. I don't know if they're in that top 5 MVP conversation, but if the Sparks continue to play incredibly well,
Saw that coming a mile away.
Dearica Hamby has to enter this conversation. Dearica Hamby is doing crazy things, but I think that it kind of gets outshined by the fact that Kelsey Plum's putting up numbers, Rakia Jackson's putting up numbers, but even the way that she closed the game out over this past weekend, like Kelsey Plum needs a Dearica Hamby to be able to set those screens and finish out those plays, and they can go to her to get a tough bucket at any moment. And I feel the same way about Aaliyah Boston. Aaliyah Boston's been more of a playmaker this year as well, which is really fun. So I don't know. Those two are the last two I want to throw out there. Any thoughts on either one?
I think we've hit the point of where Ben laments how deep the conversation has gotten.
Yep. I know I did it. I know. We literally said this before we recorded. He's like, I don't want to have a conversation where there's 12 MVPs. You're right. You're
No,
absolutely
I think
right.
Aaliyah Boston is a good name to have on this list. Whether she or Kelsey Mitchell has been more valuable to the Indiana Fever, I think is an open question, and honestly, like, one that I could probably see both sides of. Aaliyah Boston has been remarkably consistent all year long, and has had a lot of big fourth quarters. She just had one against Seattle last week that sort of helped them take that game home against the Storm on the road. As far as Dearica Hamby, I mean, who are you talking to here? But this feels more like an old W case than an MVP case,
Sure.
again, just because of where the Sparks stand in the standings. But like you said, if the Sparks keep winning, Dearica Hamby also game winner against the Storm. That's twice that's happened in the last 10 days or so for her.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a lot of big moments for LA, but the first part of the season when they went 5-13 still counts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And Dearica Hamby continuing to be the mother of the league, giving Dominic Malonga a very key lesson in not fouling at the end of the game. Ben, any last thoughts there as we close up this MVP conversation?
No, I think we covered the big names, and let's just, let's keep the conversation narrow, I guess. We can
Okay.
extend the all W conversation, but as Sabrina said, MVP, let's keep it a little tighter than
Be a little
usual.
more discerning.
Yeah.
I got you. I got you. Well, it's been a lot of fun talking about the MVPs. At this point in the season, we still have a lot more basketball to play. Let us know. What do y'all think about this MVP conversation? I thought it might have been wrapped up early, but then, of course, injuries happen. different things progress, and we'll see what happens when it comes to who gets to be at the top, gets the crown. This is gonna be a tough year again. I can feel it. I can feel it. All right, let's close it out. Before we leave you guys today, Ben, you have a really fun piece live on the site right now about something I used to dread and be awful at when we had our competitions after shoot arounds. And this is the half court shot contest. And let's just be real. In the WNBA, the stakes are a little bit higher. You talk about that throughout the piece. I love that there's this connection with the NBA. So, first and foremost, tell me, where did you even get this idea for this story? Like, how did it come about?
It just came about because I think I go to enough practices and enough shoot arounds that all end the same way, Zena. And all shoot arounds, basically, around the league, there's one team that is an exception, end with a half court shootout. After all the work is done, after all the walkthrough and all the drills have been completed, like, teams all gather at mid court and they have a contest. And different teams have different rules. As I write in the piece, some teams have it as a one round only competition. And the money, $100 usually, rolls over. Other teams say you have to hit rim or else you're eliminated. Other teams go 3 rounds. The orders are all entirely different. Some teams go by, alphabetical order. Some teams go by age. Some teams go totally random. And it is just something that, we just see it day after day, practice after practice, shoot around after
Uh-huh.
shoot around. These competitions being held and players love them. Like, it was
Yeah.
very fun to report out this story. And I shall say it was definitely a palate cleanser for me, considering the last big story that I worked on and
Ooh,
the
right.
very different topic that this one is. Like, it was just very fun throughout the last couple weeks to just ask players about their favorite traditions, because it is one of those things. And I think everyone, if you're a fan of the W, has seen these videos online. Like, there's so much laughter, there's so much trash talk, there's dancing, there's just all these stories that come out of it. And I just wanted to find a way to document this thing that we see, Sabrina and I certainly see, like, day after day, year after year.
Well, I actually got to see how the half court competition may impact actual real game schemes. Literally, I think it was at the end of the third quarter, Sparks versus Valkyries. In the Sparks' post game shoot around half court competitions, Cam Brink is like really, really good at half court shots, to the point that there is a play set up with seconds left on the clock for Cam Brink to catch the ball out of an out of bounds play and go up and put a half court shot up. She missed poorly, but still, it was like, oh, this is actually set up for her to go get a screen and go get a ball. So, what have you heard from these stories? Is it all just fun? Does it translate into actual real game, like in game kind of stuff? Like, talk a little bit about how some of these teams have kind of evolved in the way that they use the half court competition.
I would say it is mostly just for fun. Like, I
Yeah.
think teams know who is the best half court shooter on their respective team. So in the case of the New York Liberty, for instance, that's Sabrina Ionescu. In the course of the Seattle Storm, that's Skylar Diggins. But more than anything else, it is just like this fun, lighthearted competition that brings out camaraderie and trash talk and, has a little bit of money at stake. Now, I will say there is one exception to this half court tradition this year, and that is down with the Atlanta Dream. And you want to talk about game preparation. They also have a competition that they close shoot-arounds with. It is called
Mm.
Cash Out or Crash Out, and their first-year head coach, Carl Smesko, put it in this year. And in the simplest terms is that players shoot from all 5 spots around the three-point arc, and you miss one shot, and you're eliminated, and you make all 5, and you win, and you keep playing until there is a winner. And Nas Hillman for the piece told me that, like, it's great because those shots actually translate to the game. Now, I will say, Zena, like, I talked to Ryan Howard about Cash Out or Crash Out, and Ryan had been or is the best half-court shooter on the Atlanta Dream, or so she says. And so she's been pretty pissed about the Cash Out or Crash Out competition because she was cleaning up, just beating her teammates in half-court
Oh.
shooting for years, making 100 and 100 and 100. And now in Cash Out or Crash Out,
Yeah.
she has not had the same level of success. So she lightheartedly said she hasn't liked that change. But the Atlanta Dream, at least putting something in for game prep purposes. But for most teams, as I think Sabrina has seen, certainly, it's just a fun way to joke around and close out a workout.
Yeah, the
And you
Mystics
also
used to have this shooting game when the Tebows were there that nobody really knew the rules to. It would just like the coaches would even play in it, and it sort of evolved as the shots kept going in. It was all around the 3-point arc. You know, their PR person, Kelsey Coleman, has been there for like, can't even tell you how long, and she doesn't know the rules of it. It just sort of evolved like
Wow.
as Eric and Mike wanted it to work that day. So I think there is like a precedent, I would say, for teams getting a little creative with how this works. You know, whether that's a half court shot, whether that's cash out or crash out, which is a great name, honestly.
I love
Great
that
name.
name. Love
Yeah.
that name, and that makes so much sense for someone from Florida Gulf Coast to bring that to, Atlanta. Now, question for both of you to close this out. Has either of you ever hit a half court shot?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
look,
Tell us the lore. What was it like?
it depends on the court length. Like, I don't think I've ever done it on a, I guess a full length NBA, WNBA sized court. I don't know if I've ever even attempted one on
Fair.
a full size court, but if you go to my Instagram, I think there was a video a couple weeks back, and I've actually showed you guys it of me throwing it over my head. I once made a half court shot in the pickup run that I play in after just like practicing some trick shots. Not even looking at the basket if I can toot my own horn there. So that was definitely a highlight. I did not make any money from that shot, Zena. That is a big difference with this tradition because so many players, they make $100 and that becomes meal money or that becomes take home money or just like an extra boost on a trip. Can I just say too, being a good basketball player does not mean you are a good half court shooter. That is
Absolutely.
another thing that I
Agreed.
learned over the course of reporting this piece. Yes, Sabreena and Skylar Diggins are great, but Nneka Ogwumike, great player. She does not participate in the Storm's half-court shootouts because she doesn't trust her form. Asia Wilson told me
Mm.
point blank that she sucks. That was her word at
Probably the
half-court
worst one
shooting.
on the
Like,
team, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
Becky Hammond literally was like, Asia is the worst half-court shooter we have. So if you want to find something that Asia is not good at, it is half-court shooting. And she will own up to that fact. And I think that's one of kind of the delightful parts of like this tradition, that just being Asia Wilson, being as good as she is,
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're, good at this challenge too.
Yeah, no, I love the games. It's fun. I've definitely put up a half court shot. Did it take me 25 attempts? Absolutely. I mean, whatever. You have to shoot or shoot, right? That's what they say. Ben, you're just flexing all over this pod today. I love it. Half court shot, no looks. This is the energy you have to bring when you report a story like this. Respect, it's mutual respect between half court shooters and yourself. Thank you for that little breakdown. Guys, go check out this article. It's really fun. I love Aaliyah Boston's term when she hits hers. Carry on, because it makes me think of Beyonce. But
Do-
go read so you'll get that reference.
can I give you one other note on Aaliyah? Do you know what she calls
Oh,
herself?
yeah.
This didn't make the piece, but she has a
No.
nickname for herself. She calls herself the banker because not because she banks in half court shots, because she likes to verify that the money that she thinks she is about to receive is real. So
Wow.
she goes over, she holds the bill up, does that little light test, whatever, you
Does
see
she
in
actually know
restaurants or
what now,
Does she
Aaliyah,
have the
that's
pen,
hilarious.
I
Right,
don't know. I
exactly,
cannot
exactly.
confirm if she has the correct pen or not, or if she makes a staffer bring it out. But Aaliyah Boston, yes, she calls herself the banker, because she's verifying if it's real. And as the story says, she recently
Dead.
called her shot and made one.
I would have definitely assumed bank shot. And let's be real, you can never put anything past WNBA players. We're gonna find out that Leah Boston had like a finance background or working at the mint and knows exactly what should be shown up when you put in the light, because let's just be real, that I will never be able to tell when people are checking for real bills what they're actually looking for. So the banker, let us know. Aaliyah, if you hear this ever, I would love to know what you're looking at when you check those bills. Thank you, Ben, for that story. That is all we've got for you guys today. So we will be back on Friday with more WNBA content. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star rating wherever you're listening: Spotify, YouTube, Apple. We love to hear it, and tell your friends to check us out. And write us a comment. We love to hear from you guys. We want to hear what your thoughts are on the MVP conversation. And have you guys ever hit a half court shot? And of course, head on over to our partner, Yahoo Sports Hub, for more content at sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. On behalf of The Athletic, Sabrina, and Ben. I'm Zena Cada, thanking you for listening. We will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to No Off Season. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.